Hi, good morning. I'm Allison Snow with the Legal Aid Society of San Diego. I'm an attorney here who helps and works on behalf of clients who are in jeopardy of losing their homes to foreclosure. I'd like to introduce you to Martha Rojas. Martha is going to tell us the story of how Legal Aid Society of San Diego was able to help her family save her home. Miss Martha Rojas.
Good morning. My name is Martha Rojas. A contractor told us we could save money with solar energy, so we signed up to refinance our home. We were provided a lot of documents to sign in English and didn't realize that what we signed up for cost us more money than our current mortgage. None of the documents were provided to my husband and me, Spanish, even though the transaction was all in Spanish. The finance company put a lien on my home and had me sign documents that said if we failed to make one payment, they could foreclosure our house. We couldn't afford the payments for the solar energy. I am thankful that Allison and Legal Aid of San Diego helped our family save our home.
Martha, thank you for sharing your story, and Allison for what you do here at Legal Aid, along with Greg Knoll. We are fortunate in San Diego to have a Legal Aid Society of this caliber, of this level of service, and I'm grateful to be able to stand here with my partner in the legislature, Senator President Pro Tem Tony Atkins, and of course with our amazing governor to make an announcement about additional state support for programs like this one. And I need to just note right off the top, we are excited when the governor comes to town here in San Diego. We acknowledge geographically we are very, very far from Sacramento. Not that far when the airport's right here and Southwest goes every hour, but not everyone makes their way down here. And as the press can attest, this is many times in just in his first year, the governor has come down here to show the respect that we as the second biggest city in San Diego, I think, expect and deserve, and the governor keeps delivering. And we're going to continue on that today. Many of you know that I'm passionate about solving our housing and our housing affordability crisis. As a member of the Assembly's Housing Committee, and apparently as the legislature's only renter, I want to say that it's coastal San Diego County, everybody. It's hard to buy a home in San Diego. I want to say that today's action will go a long way to protecting homeowners and to protecting tenants while simultaneously ensuring that we are building the housing that we need across California. $331 million will now be available to assist homeowners and tenants, individuals and families who are facing things like foreclosure, and who need borrower relief, and in the case of renters, unjust evictions. In addition, California is stepping up to make sure that local jurisdictions do their fair share and are meaningfully and faithfully building housing at all income levels. The housing crisis is a statewide crisis. San Diego is doing innovative things to address it, but San Diego can't do it by itself. Every community must do its fair share, and Governor Newsom has been leading that effort. Being a California for all means that we have to create the circumstances which present Californians, as well as future Californians, our children and our grandchildren, have a real chance to live here and see a future for themselves in California. This bill today, as Governor Newsom signs it, will do just that. And we know and acknowledge that more work lies ahead, but the goal must always remain the same: a roof over every Californian's head at a price they can afford, and with real consumer protections to make sure that those who prey upon people like Martha and others in our community know that they will be held accountable, and that folks like Martha and her family can stay in their homes and have a place for themselves here in California. So with those comments, it gives me great pleasure to introduce someone who needs no introduction to the San Diego Press Corps, or really the statewide press corps either, my partner in the legislature, our senator, the Senate President Pro Tem, Tony Atkins.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone, and Governor, welcome back to San Diego. We are always thrilled to have you here, and I'm always happy to be in partnership with Todd Gloria, my assembly member. Our commitment, our joint commitment, our personal commitment to housing is the reason we are both in Sacramento. I'm really thrilled to be here, and I want to thank you, Allison and Greg. I actually got my start at Legal Aid in Southwest Virginia as an intern and a college student. And the work that I did was intake for individuals in 7 counties of Southwest Virginia that had housing issues. So I grew up in substandard housing, but working at Legal Aid gave me the voice and the ability to figure out how I was going to work on housing issues for people who needed a good home to live in, whether renting or owning. And so I want to thank you for what you do for our consumers and homeowners and renters in San Diego County. Legal Aid has a special place in my heart. You know, I'm glad that Assemblymember Gloria framed the issue. We are working in partnership on all issues related to housing. This bill, SB 113, that our governor is getting ready to sign, is really a significant and ongoing investment that the state is making to address struggling homeowners and renters, especially meaningful because it will be ongoing. And I want to applaud the vision of the governor because it was his idea to work to create a trust with the $331 million that we are getting back from our efforts to reclaim money on behalf of homeowners. What we hope and want to do is to make sure that we have some ongoing resources to help in this fight. We'll be engaging, I know, stakeholders and community partners as we seek to put together a program that is structured thoughtfully to make the biggest impact going forward. So while we recognize so many issues around housing and homelessness, and the governor in his vision and the work of Assemblymember Gloria and so many legislators up and down the state, we hope to make a real difference. And it's going to take work because this is complex. But it gives me, complex, that's a simple, it is complex. But in my introduction of our governor, Gavin Newsom, I want to say I applaud his vision, I applaud his tenacity, I applaud his focus on every aspect, and SB 113 is a critical component of what we hope to do at the state. And with that, it's my pleasure to welcome Governor Gavin Newsom.
Thank you, Madam Pro Tem. Thank you for those generous words, and thank you, all of you, for assembling here today. And Allison, thank you for incredible work. I wish you all upstairs in our private meeting so you can how often overlooked the work is that they do every single day. Legal aid, I mean, changing lives, quite literally saving lives, the words you used. And Martha, you extend that same. You know, it's one of those things in life, those magical moments when you sit with people solving real problems, making a direct impact on someone else's life in such a profound and consequential way. So it's good to be here. I don't want to just say that flippantly. I mean, it's really nice to be here. And so I want to thank all of you that do that work every day. And I know a number of you are here as well, and we're grateful to you. I want to thank the Assembly member for his leadership and stewardship through this process. It is remarkable. I looked over at the Pro Tem. You may be, honestly, one of the few renters. I mean, that wasn't an exaggeration.
I'm sure there are others, but
I'm not sure. I don't know. I was kind of doing the math. It's just remarkable.
I've harder things in the past.
No, it's just interesting. Yeah, well, that's true. It's true. This is a moment. That's funny. But it's an important perspective, and it's one that's often overlooked in the state of California. And I say that because this week we're trying to make a real impact on reminding folks that roughly 8 million of us in the state of California are renters that have deep anxiety every 1st and 15th of the month, that folks are feeling enormous strain and stress. We live in a state where 5.6 million households are making decisions every single month that have profound consequences on their ability to thrive, let alone survive in this state. And those decisions are as simple as this. Do I have any money left over to invest in my future and the uncertainty that the future may provide? Do I have resources to sock away in case there's a disruption in my professional life? Do I have the ability to help with my kids' education, or, as we're discovering in a world we're living in, take care of our parents? All of a sudden we become the caregivers. And we're living in a state where over 30% of Californians are spending, or roughly 30% are spending 50% of their income. 50% of their income on rent, which is an extraordinary number. That means they have no money to set aside for uncertainty. And that's why so many people end up out on the streets. We wonder what the hell's going on in this state as it relates to homelessness. It's about affordability. Homeless is not very complicated. You want to solve homelessness? Get someone housed. And to the extent you have to deal with the wraparound issues and deal with underlying issues, obviously supportive services. And so it's a foundational issue that connects so many of the stresses and frustrations I know as taxpayers and citizens of the state we all feel. We need to address the issue of affordability. It's connected to the dream. We've got an American dream and you got a California dream. There's no other state in the country that connects to a dream. But the California dream is predicated on social mobility. And we have to address the issue of affordability if we're going to maintain and enliven that dream in the state of California. This is the issue. And so what we're here today to talk about, what we were up in Oakland yesterday talking about, was the most aggressive rent control protections in the United States of America, which this legislature passed. We're now talking about addressing the stubborn issue of making sure that programs like this have the resources to keep people in their homes before they end out on the streets and sidewalks, to make sure people that have been the victims of predatory lending and unscrupulous practices have the support and the knowledge and capacity to work themselves out of those arrangements. The challenge in the past has been episodic. The funding has been mostly one time, including, dare I say, this year. We passed a budget with over $20 million of additional supplement for legal aid, but it's one-time money. And while we're enjoying these extraordinary surpluses, I remind you, contrast that to the federal government that's running historic deficits. We're running historic surpluses. We recognize the headwinds in front of us. And so the idea around this $331 million endowment is to create an annuity of sorts, to guarantee, regardless of what happens in the macroeconomic outlook, that we have the resources to make sure that we're protecting those most in need, particularly as the economy slows, where all those needs become even more acute, but our resources become less abundant. This is a way of locking in and protecting ourselves from that downturn and making sure when that money is needed the most, it will be made available. I don't know many states, respectfully, and I'll close, that are doing anything of this kind. $331 million, putting in the proverbial lockbox, creating an annuity every year, making sure we have resources that get to communities like this and programs like this. So I just want to thank again the leadership of the Senate and the Pro Tem, and of course leadership in the Assembly for passing this bill. We've got some work to do to tweak it and get these dollars out into the new year, and we'll be following up with that very shortly. But this is a privilege to be able to sign this legislation and get this money moving out into our state. So with that, I will sign this legislation, which I assume is here. Todd, did you ring it? Yeah. All right. Oh, it is here. All right. I didn't see it. So why don't we do that? Why don't we all get closer so we can, you got a pen here? Yeah, let's do it. You good?
Yeah.
All right. So we'll do a picture first. All right. All done. Thank you, Madam Pro Tem. If everything was so easy, but honored. So with that, we're happy to take any questions, and you should ask Greg some questions, because he's got more answers than all of us up here combined. But any questions?
Yeah.
Governor, can you say something, and I'm sorry it's off topic, but can you say something about the power shutoffs?
Can I get to that in one moment? And I completely respect it. Trust me, appreciate that. It was anybody on this topic? Any of us?
Yes, Hispanic families have been the target of a lot of abusive landlords about renting. And legal aid in different locations, it's hard to get. We have several complaints all the time in our station about Hispanic community, Hispanic families, households that rent, and they're always being committed abuse on this. Will this help ease up on this situation, and then will be availability for
The short answer is absolutely yes, but let me fill in the blank with Greg's insight.
I can only speak to San Diego. I can only speak to San Diego, but we have the largest what's called Shriver program. We provide representation to anyone who is financially eligible at the downtown courthouse. On their summons, it says you may qualify for a free lawyer, and that's us. And we represent everybody. In fact, this is one of the reasons we can't do anything about homelessness and people on the streets, but we can stop homelessness from growing by keeping people in their homes. And the increase in Shriver this year, and we hope in other areas, is going to be really helpful to renters. We have seen in the Hispanic community and in all immigrant communities, City Heights, other places, where landlords have treated the renters extremely improperly. And we're working on a few of those lawsuits right now.
By the way, I love hearing anything SARS Shriver. By the way, look him up. I know it's the Kennedy you all forgot about. But he was the one who waged the war on poverty, and we actually reduced poverty in this country, proving it can be done. Started legal aid for the poor, probably had more impact than any president. And he never served one day in elected office, proving moral authority is more important than formal authority. Forgive that commentary.
This is about legal aid for housing and production. What is the production part?
Well, we're focusing on the 3 Ps. It's not only preservation as it relates to existing housing stock and protections as it relates to evictions we're talking about here today, but that 3rd P you brought up is the issue of production. We're 49th out of 50th in per capita housing units in the United States. We have created this mess. It's not very complicated. It's 7th grade Econ 101. Supply, demand, imbalance. Not enough supply, huge demand, increased costs. Vacancy rates that are historic low. So we significantly have to increase our production. We, this year, invested $1.75 billion to jumpstart our production frame, $500 million of new tax credits that could be leveraged 2 to 3 to 1, another $500 million of new revolving loans that get into the missing middle, which is workforce housing, not just low-income housing. We put $250 million up in new infrastructure grants to help support cities and municipalities, not only with physical infrastructure, but the human capital needed to upgrade their housing elements, their master plans to do the work that is so desperately needed. In addition, you may have noted, we haven't been shy about holding communities accountable to meeting their production goals. There were 46 cities in this state that were out of compliance under the housing element. I sued one of those cities, Huntington Beach, because with respect, I love Huntington Beach. It's not an indictment of the people there, but it is an indictment of the policies there. They were turning a blind eye to the issue of housing. They weren't even planning for it, let alone building it. That's wrong. We need to hold folks accountable. And finally, we have new incentives in this budget beyond the money, and that is to do the right thing, because if you don't, we're going to hold back some other state funds. This is a serious issue, and we have to take it more seriously and much more soberly, not just rhetorically. We're not done yet. This was a good year on the production side. The Pro Tem a year ago put together a coalition that got the voters overwhelmingly supported for a housing bond. She put together a transaction fee that generates over $250 million a year that helps in this space. A lot of good things happening, not overnight, but finally a different kind of intentionality on the production side. But at the end of the day, localism is determinative. And I cannot impress upon you more. The state of California and Sacramento cannot build our way out of this. It happens at the local level. 470 plus cities, 58 counties, doing their job. And I say lovingly and respectfully, doing their job. And that is building more density around transit corridors and focusing on an issue that defines our moment in time, and that's the issue of affordability. Again, the issue that brings us here today. Forgive me for being so long-winded.
If there's somebody out there who thinks that this news today could benefit them, they're in a tough spot either with rent or mortgages, things like that, how do they know if they can be helped? Who do they talk to? How do they reach out to know if they qualify for help?
Allison, Jonathan, you want to take that?
Call us.
Call.
877-534-2524. Call us. Where we can help you, or we can find people to help you. But that's what our mission and goal is.
And in San Diego County, I imagine you can call 211 if you didn't get that number for legal aid. You're connected to 211.
We actually receive the most referrals of any agency from 211.
And I just want to caution people, be careful about these damn reverse mortgages. I mean, I grew up, I was an 80s kid. I love Tom Selleck. But just watch this space. Watch this space. When someone knocks on your door, talks about the PACE program, be careful. I mean, this is serious stuff. People are literally out on the streets and sidewalks because of these programs. And I'm not suggesting in every way, shape, or form there's not a circumstance where these programs may not be right. They might be. But too many people are being taken advantage of, particularly in the Latino community. And we've got to call that out. And forgive me again, I know those industries aren't going to be happy to hear that from a governor. But they need to be accountable to a higher level of transparency and decency, morality, and the law in some cases.
Governor, obviously the state has priorities, but some cities, like you said, they don't want to comply with the housing element. They say we're already built out, or we just don't want more housing here. How do you change their mindset? How do you get?
Well, if they care about their kids, they care about the state, they care about the future, then they'll change their mindset. I mean, we're not just talking about people going into debt because they can't afford housing. They're going out on the streets, or in some ways, for me, most indignant part, they're leaving the state altogether. How many kids cannot afford to live in the home they grew up in? How many parents would love to have their kids leave, but then again are scared to death if they do leave, they may end up in Tennessee, and they'll only see them on holidays. This is a serious issue. I caution, and one of the words I don't try to overuse is crisis, because we tend to normalize it, and when there is one, people don't, they sort of roll their eyes. This is a crisis in the state of California, the crisis of affordability. I watch one of those news networks. They're beating us up every single day, and you know what? They're right on this issue. They don't have the right prescription to solve it. They're demagoguing it, but they're not wrong to identify the obvious. This issue of affordability must be addressed head on, and we need to call local government out for not building enough housing.
Why do you think some cities are dragging their feet?
Because it's tough politics. We got ours. I have my beautiful home. I got mine. I could just do it someplace else. Do it in other states, like homeless programs. San Diego bears the brunt. Other communities say, well, San Diego will do more. And all of a sudden, there's no having made it. You're building more, doing more, spending more. Problem gets worse. You sit there doing nightly news stories about why the hell their local officials can't solve this problem. They're saying the problem's never been bigger. We're solving it for more people than we ever have, yet it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And other communities are off the hook. It's the same thing with housing. And it just, again, that needs to be called out. We're all rowing together. All of us are in this together. I said it yesterday, no leak on your side of our boat. This fundamental notion of interdependence, rise and fall together. And so a job of a governor is try to connect that tissue. Many parts, one state, and one state vision realized at the local level.
Governor, when you see something like tiny apartments being built in Little Italy, it's a story that we just did, is that innovative, or do you find that to be worrisome?
I think it's innovative. And we're actually trying to encourage new innovative modular, additive manufacturing, and prefab housing in addition to these tiny homes as well. And we're incentivizing it through some programs the state has advanced, including, by the way, the first overlay of surplus state property that we've ever put forward in our state's history. And we're incentivizing local governments. We have announced 6 local governments that are participating in these land swap agreements. The first one we announced last week in Stockton. And part of the incentive is to waive a lot of fees and to waive a lot of the process if you are investing in innovative new styles of housing production. And that would fall neatly in that space. But again, I appreciate the question because it begs the question, is that where we're going to end up as a state as the solution, or more traditional ways of focusing on density around transit corridor and more appropriate living arrangements. And I know the utility question, and my spokesman, Todd Gloria, is going to answer that one. No, I appreciate it. Thanks for your patience, by the way. I appreciate it. That's sweet. No, look, we went to bed last night getting updated. Woke up this morning just getting a new update on my way over on what is happening primarily in Northern California, but what may occur down here. With San Diego Gas and Electric, what happened, I'm up to LA after this, with Southern California Edison. Both are potentially going to move in the same direction that PG&E has already moved in, and that is on the de-energization. Now, you know this well because in many respects, San Diego is the model of efficacy in this space. You've been the most proactive. You have one of the best records, safety records, in the United States, not just the state of California. People travel from all over the country and around the world to learn about San Diego Gas and Electric's efforts. One of the tools in their toolkit is focusing on preventative measures, predicting weather, and analyzing conditions in a very scientific way. They have analyzed what PG&E's folks have analyzed and our state officials have analyzed, that we are entering into a 2, 3, 4 day period of extreme fire danger in the state of California. Not just in Northern California, Central California, and potentially Friday and Saturday down here in the southern part of the state. The first impacts are in Northern California, where you have a combination of two things: low humidity and very high winds, these diablo winds that are coming into the state. We've been working very collaboratively with cities and counties. We have what we call the SOC, which is our State Operations Center, that's been open the last 2 days. We are monitoring and collaborating and coordinating with our state and local agencies, pre-positioning assets, focusing on the utilization of a $75 million appropriation that the legislative leaders provided the state, so we can distribute money in real time to supplement the efforts of the investor-owned utilities, and making sure we're focusing on three things: public safety, public health, and minimizing the business disruption that obviously is of concern to anyone that faces a potential shutoff.
Governor, your state made national news after signing the Fair Pay to Play Act. Some athletic directors say they don't support it, including San Diego State's athletic director. They're concerned about NCAA saying that they might bar them from competing. Do you see any unintended consequences here?
No, I mean, look, I think legislature was wise to give a 3-year implementation phase, so we have a chance to dialogue and engage. I serve as member, and as does the pro tem on the UC Regions and the CSU Board of Trustees. We approve athletic director contracts. We approve coaching contracts. Some of the highest paid public employees are coaches. It is very directly part of our role and responsibility in the state, overseeing 33 campuses between the UCs and CSUs, to focus on student athletes and emphasize student athletes. So it's the language, nomenclature of the NC2A themselves. I don't think they have been focused on student athletes as much as they've been focused on athletes. And with respect, I think they can take a cue from the Olympics and allow people to do what every other member of a student body and campus community can do, and that is monetize their name, image, and likeness. There's only one group that's denied that fundamental right, and that's an athlete that waives that right. And I find it the height of irony. There are coaches out there making quite literally millions and millions of dollars, flying on private planes, enjoying country club memberships, who have athletes that don't get the kind of quality education that other members of the campus community do, get injured, sacrifice limb, and sacrifice their talents, and get nothing for it. And with respect, the education, as profound and important as that is, others with scholarships that get an education are afforded the right to sell their name, image, and likeness. So I respect the concerns and anxieties, but I think the state's doing the right thing, and we agree with, I think, Coach K particular, and I'll take Coach K as a advisor on this more than some of the other coaches out there. That's for you, Greg, because you're a basketball player. 5 championships. I'm not a big Duke guy, though. I don't know, but I like Coach K. And LeBron's not. Now all of a sudden I have to like LeBron. I like LeBron. All right, I do like LeBron. But I'm a Northern Cal. I'm a Warrior guy. It's hard. I gotta like the Lakers, but I do like them.
I know you said that universities are making billions while athletes make nothing. SDSU's athletic director pointed out, hey, we're giving them free school. A lot of these kids, they're getting medical insurance, they're getting food, they're getting housing. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I mean, $14+ billion was generated from college sports last year, so it's absolutely true. Billions of dollars are being made. Everybody's making them. Coaches, athletic directors, assistant coaches, all the advertisers, the programs directly themselves, and everybody but the athletes, the talent. I mean, from a free enterprise perspective, that should I don't know. I think it's interesting. There's a bipartisan piece of legislation. Republicans picked up the free enterprise argument, and Democrats perhaps a little more sensitive. I don't know. I don't want to be unfair, but to the social justice arguments as well. And so, I think those are old talking points from the NC2A. The world's changing. And by the way, public opinion has moved on. But it's a very comfortable place to be for those that have benefited greatly to say, hey, things are going wonderfully. I just don't see that for the athletes themselves. And I don't want to get into the racial issues, but they are profoundly important. Predominantly white coaches, and certainly a majority in Division I basketball, black, and a plurality in Division I football. And that respectfully concerns me as well. And I don't think we'd have this conversation if that was reversed.
Mr. Governor, if I can, you had mentioned that you were outraged about the power shutoffs. Why? And what would you do differently?
Well, because I'm a citizen, and my kids are at home right now. I want them in school. I've got a bunch of businesses that are impacted, and I'd rather criticize Donald Trump than act like him, talking about my businesses in Northern California. But we're in the middle of wine crush, and folks are running around trying to get generators right now in the middle of crush. I mean, it's very consequential. And by the way, I'm outraged because it didn't need to happen. Didn't need to happen if you had a investor-owned utility was making kind of investments that your investor-owned utility was making down here, and focusing on modern transmission lines, and focusing on modern ways of turning on and off lights that wouldn't be disruptive in the aggregate to 1 million or 2 million people, as it potentially may impact over the next 24 to 48 hours. So it was unnecessary. They're in bankruptcy because of their terrible management going back decades. They've created these conditions. It was unnecessary. We're doing everything in our power, my gosh, doing everything in our power to help them help themselves. Now it's time for them to do the right thing and get out of bankruptcy and get this system to the 21st century.
If you were in charge of PG&E, what would you do moving forward? Do you think specifically?
I'd focus on settling with the victims, the fire victims, number one. Without that, they're not going to get out of bankruptcy. Number two, to move much more aggressively, though we have seen some improvement, but even more improvement needs to be done, to focus on hardening, pole hardening, and investing in more modern transmission lines and modern equipment. We also believe that they have enormous amount of work to do to, I think, differentiate their leadership from the past and be more proactively concerned not just about public safety, but the public interests more broadly, and not shareholder interests more specifically. Beyond that, I don't think they're making a mistake as it relates to proactive measures to mitigate the prospect of fires. I think that's the right decision, and I think that is demonstrable, especially down here, because that is a best practice of one of the better managed utilities in our country, San Diego Gas and Electric.
Governor, I know you've opposed gun shows at the Del Mar Fairgrounds. Mr. Gloria has written a bill that would ban them soon. It's sitting on your desk.
Get in here. Tell me I should sign it.
I agree. I agree.
I'm just curious, well, Todd, you guys, I'm just curious if you're planning on signing that. I know a court has said those gun shows
The governor knows that the pro tem and I would very much like him to sign it. I hope we'll have some news for you very soon.
How about Friday?
I'm not getting ahead of my governor. We're going to have resolution on this issue shortly, and we're going to do that because the communities around the Del Mar Fairgrounds have been very clear that this is not what they want in their community, and the state should not be complicit in the injection of additional guns into our neighborhoods. So I'm optimistic about the outcome because we have a leader in the governor's office who has been working on gun safety his entire career. And so I think we will be heard, and I hope to have some news for you very soon.
And Governor, do you plan to sign that, or are you worried about legal challenges? I mean, the courts have.
Madam Pro Tem?
I'm not worried. I think the governor has proven time and time again that he is willing to stand up for communities and do what needs to be done. And he has faced courts before, and we have prevailed, including the Supreme Court, so on other issues. So I applaud my assembly member for this piece of legislation. I, too, am optimistic. Governor?
And I signed a letter, as you know, as Lieutenant Governor on this topic. I think that's suggestive. And I really appreciate the deep representation that is exampled here by two local leaders, or state leaders in the gun safety space, having the back of your community, and I'm very likely to support that commitment to public safety. Anybody else? We'll let everybody go. We'll take advantage of that pause. Thank you all very, very much.
Really, every issue.
Every day of the week. That was pretty good.
Oh, jeez. I know, I hate that. That's false sense.
Thank you.
Good to see you. You came by and you spoke to the group. I want to thank you. You just remember probably yesterday, flying a Bill 1730. Lorena Gonzalez that gave us 2 years to
We do,
develop
we
our
do.
plan.
I don't think you're
And I
going to see
appreciate that.
our
I just
delegation
wanted
is
to come
strong.
here and say thank you very much.
Oh, that's great.
And I'm very proud of you. You spoke 5 years ago in the desert.
Yeah, I remember that.
And my gosh, the line was known for your books. We're very grateful for everything you're doing.
Thank you.
Especially this is a good man here.
Hassan's doing amazing things for us. We're just starting to act like a big city now. But
They're not ready to listen in San Diego, but I'm going to fight the fight in the desert